Death gave me a choice. Death came to me that night, as I sat numbly in a puddle of my own desperate blood, tears. When I saw him, a tall entity, clothed in a robe so black that it reached past the depths of darkness that I felt inside my heart. I had been upset, not about one thing in particular, but multiple things. I've made so many mistakes. Trying to put myself back together had become harder than reassembling a broken eggshell. A year earlier, I'd lost the most important person in my life, the only girl I truly loved, Penny. And I could only blame myself. I'd spent the past year blaming myself. I betrayed her. I betrayed her trust. And now she found a new guy. A better guy. One that bought her flowers and took her on dates. He was loyal to her. And all that just reminded me of all the chances I had to do those things for her. 6 months earlier, the guilt, pain got to me, tore at my soul. To numb the pain, I took sleeping pills with alcohol every night, dreading the moment I'd wake up to another sunny, lonely day. 4 months earlier, I'd lost my job and my scholarship because the depression and substance abuse kept me rooted to the spot. I didn't want to face a world where I had to watch everyone else swim while I slowly sank. 3 months earlier, I'd lost all my friends and family. I'd become distant, emotionless. I turned down invites. I didn't go to family get-togethers. I blew up on anyone who told me I needed help. I was in chaos, and I had no one to blame but myself. 1 month earlier, I bought a small rectangular case of razors. Knew I was adding self-abuse to the substance abuse. I felt the smallest relief when I felt the sharp sting and saw the deep red flow down my wrist. That night, I called my ex-girlfriend, slightly tipsy, yeah, but I was truthful all the same. I told her I loved her. I begged for another chance. I cried. I cried harder than I had in months just hearing the sound of her voice. She told me one thing and one thing only. I don't love you anymore, Calvin, and I never will. She hung up. All I could do was stare blankly at the corner of the room. But as everything hit me at once, and hit me harder than a car going at full speed, I didn't hesitate. I swallowed the rest of the sleeping pills and I gulped down the remaining vodka straight from the bottle. I used the razors to cut deeper than I'd ever cut. And so, here I sat, hopeless and alone. But I wasn't alone. I looked down at my bloody wrists for mere seconds, and when I looked back up, he was there. A normal person would have been hysterical and afraid, but I wasn't normal. Not anymore. I wasn't surprised he was there, no. I welcomed it. Calvin. He spoke in a baritone voice, and he said that word with a disapproving sigh. The way he said it made me feel like a kid again, as if I'd done something and lied about it, but I wasn't lying. The proof was in the mess that was myself at that moment. I sobbed, shakily. I'm sorry, I said. For whatever reason, I felt like I had to apologize, so I did. You've spent a long time being sorry, Calvin, but not once have you said sorry to yourself. A crease formed over my eyebrows as I mulled over what he'd said. It came to me slowly. He wanted me to see I was my own worst enemy. Do you give all the souls you come across helpful advice? I thought you were death, not a psychologist. I raised an eyebrow at him, still unnerved by the fact that I was looking into an endless black hole where his face should be. He forced a deep, short laugh. No, just ones like you, that take it into their own hands to decide fate. It's not up to you, Calvin. So, you give advice to your suicide victims. And what does that mean, then? He sighed again, as if he'd explained this 1,000 times. I'm sure he had. It means you don't get to decide. It means I'm giving you another perspective. I stood up, curiosity hanging over every word. And what perspective would that be? The only way I see it is that I'm a horrible crap excuse for a human being. Why be afraid of dying when I'm more afraid to live? I had to do this. I needed to do this. And I'm showing you, Calvin, what living can do for you. A hint of persuasion in his voice. Tell me death. What do I have to live for? The question came out harshly, but he didn't flinch. Listen closely. What if I told you you could make it through this? Not fully healed, but controlled. Medication, therapy. What if I told you that because you overcome this depression, you can get another job? A job that can pay for your education. And when you're done with that, you'll be admired. Admired by your friends, your family, your girlfriend. They'll see the greatness in you. The greatness you know you have. They'll be proud of that change. You won't drink. And you will have a career. You'll pay for an expensive ring, propose to that girl. You'll give her the flowers and the loyalty you failed to give before. You could give her a dream wedding, and most importantly, you could give her 2 beautiful children, a girl and a boy. What if I told you you'll be missing out on a life if you chose to give up now? Tears rimmed my eyes opaquely. I can be happy again? I asked, hopefully, afraid of what the answer might be. But his answer was the biggest relief I'd ever felt. You could be happy again. I wiped my wet cheeks and cracked a trembling smile. Then I'd say I want to live. Then I'm no longer needed. The finality in his voice diminished the tension that I'd felt before. I grinned wider and let out a half cry, half chuckle. Thank you. Thank you so much. In a flash, the black void was gone. For days afterwards, I couldn't get rid of my smile. The nurses and doctors helped me, and they were puzzled. A man being treated for a suicide attempt this happy? I knew to them there was nothing right about it, but I haven't felt this right my whole life. Because my obvious mental health, I'd stayed in the mental ward for a few months. I healed physically. Just like Death said, I still had memories of my depression, but therapy, medication could fix it. After I was released, I found a job. It was in a call centre. And they paid slightly more than minimum wage. No, not the best of jobs, but I was glad to have it. I saved money for a few months and I started going to school again. I was working towards my business degree. My friends and family were there to watch me graduate. I'd never felt more thankful. And finally, I was making people proud again. I wasn't failing. I didn't even drink that night. With the rest of my friends, I didn't want to touch alcohol. I spent that night with the people closest to me, all seated at a large table in the best restaurant in town. I was glad I chose that restaurant too, because our waitress was Penny, the girl I missed and still loved. She looked surprised to see me, but she also looked glad. Calvin, she said as she stared at me like I was her long-lost twin. I wanted to smile too, but I noticed something. She had a faint purple underneath her right eye. It wasn't being completely hidden by her beige foundation. She saw I noticed, and before I could say anything, she began taking orders. Concerned, I told my family and friends that they were leaving, and I was going to stay. They understood, and after more congratulations, they departed. I waited for an hour in the twilight-stained parking lot. I could breathe the fresh spring air. She was one of the first to come out, and she noticed me propped against the entrance. She halted her stride. Penny's face lit up. There were tears in her eyes. I knew you'd wait for me, Cal. I know you're a great guy. I think I've always known you had potential. I was being my own worst enemy. Those words brought back the tiniest memories of what Death told me in the months prior. That I should say sorry to myself, and now she needed to do the same. The past is the past, Penny. No animosity. She looked even more grateful, and she reached to hug me, but I put a hand to her cheek before she could. I gently rubbed the purple under her eye. Did he do this to you? I asked, concerned and pissed off. Penny didn't say a word, but her deep brown eyes said it all. He obviously was over the accommodating boyfriend role now, and had started asking too much of her. But I would become everything she needed, and more. I pulled her into a hug and I ran my fingers through her hair. This won't happen again. I'm here now. After that night, things were better than they'd ever been between me and Penny. She'd gotten away from her abusive boyfriend, and together we got him sent to jail. We'd spend every moment we had to spare with each other, and it was like we'd never be parted. Even our old inside jokes remained the same. With time, I saved enough money to buy her a beautiful ring, and I proposed to her right in the middle of the local high school football field where we met so many years ago. A field, maybe not the best setting for a proposal, but it meant so much to both of us. Flowers filled our new home with fragrant smells. I brought home one every day. After work, I made reservations every weekend for our dates. No girl would ever mean to me as much as Penny. The wedding was one she'd always dreamed of when we were younger. A winter wedding. There was snow, everything adorned in blue and white, and that long-sleeved dress she hoped for when she saw it in that store window. A year after our marriage, Penny came to me with the best news I'd ever received. She was pregnant. We found out it was a girl, and I was every bit the happy father when Violet came into the world. Dark hair, just like her mum. 2 years later we had a son, Jackson. He looked like me, green eyes, chestnut hair. Violet was over the moon about having a younger sibling. Life was amazing. It was everything that was promised to me, and more. I chose life the last time I saw death, and it felt like life chose me. So you can imagine my shock the day I found him standing in front of my work desk. I'd been tapping away at my computer, focused on nothing but work. He broke the trance. I became a statue, still, motionless. After seconds of a vacant stare-off, I broke the stillness. Why? He sighed again, much like he had that night we'd met. That disapproving sigh, but now apprehension. Something has happened, Calvin. Something bad. My heart beat swiftly against my ribs. I stopped breathing. What do you mean? A million things raced through my mind at once. My family, my friends, myself. Did something happen to them? Was something happening to me? Do you remember Hale? You remember him, don't you, Calvin? Hale? The piece of crap we put in jail? I hated that name. Yeah, I remember him, that bastard. What about him? Did he get what was coming to him? He got out of jail, Calvin. The caution and pity in that one sentence. This can't be good. I stood up from my office chair, flustered. There's no way he could have gotten out. He received 15 years. It's only been 9. Good behaviour, Calvin. I was enraged. How could this monster be capable of good behaviour? Then I remembered. He fooled Penny once. He was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He was definitely capable of fooling others. I think you need to come with me. I didn't waste any time. I followed him, not bothering to tell anyone I was leaving. My first priority was to make sure that the people I loved were okay. but the pieces that were being put together in my mind, they were anything but okay. I drove at 90 all the way home, beads of sweat forming on my forehead, my breathing loud and audible. Death followed me into the house. I rushed inside, but he said nothing. My living room was a mess. Vases. The vases that held the flowers I give to Penny. A million little petals that littered the floor. I was so immensely angry and scared at the same time. Scared mostly because the scene in front of me hinted that nothing good could come of this. I screamed with terror in my voice. Penny? Violet? Jack? Where? The master bedroom, Calvin, Death said, from somewhere in my peripheral. He pointed to the door at the end of the hall, a door that was chopped and broken and slightly ajar. I sprinted down the hall and pushed past the door, not worrying about the sharp splinters that dug into my left hand. The light was off. And I wish I hadn't turned it on. Because when I did, I was met with sheer horror. Blood, crimson painted across the white carpet and bed sheets, the walls, and painted on the bodies of the 3 people in my life that meant the most to me. The details are too traumatizing. Can't repeat them. The axe that was used, it was left behind, embedded in my wife's skull. I fell to my knees in front of them, racking sobs so hard they made me sick. I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't speak. I was screaming under the weight of this emotional pain. This hurt. You said it would be better. I turned to Death, screaming and seeing red. You said I'd be happy. Why? I sobbed, deeply, unable to contain the lump in my throat. And you were, Calvin. You were happy for several years. But life comes with chances. Good ones and bad ones. Everyone suffers. Suffer? I have nothing to live for. Death? I've lost my reasons for living, for working, for loving. That's more than suffering. I couldn't contain the contempt in my voice. I got dangerously close to that black hole of a face that Death wore, and despite having to look up to see it. You're wrong, Calvin. I'm not just here for your family. I do have to do my job. He lifted his bony hands in surrender. I'm here for you. What? Oh. You know what I'm planning to do. You know I'm going to kill myself, psychologist. I spat at him. Hot rage drenched every word. Actually, yes. I know you're going to try. You'll go and get that pistol from the top shelf of your closet, and you're going to blow your brains out. You'll do it in a few hours right here in this very room. But I have another perspective for you. My mouth hung ajar. He knew my plans, knew where I kept my pistol for protection. But I couldn't be too surprised. After a moment I crossed my arms and I glared. Oh, another perspective for me. What? What could possibly make me choose life this time? This is a life that isn't worth living. For the first and last time, Death laid his hand on my shoulder. And although I couldn't see his face, I knew he was looking in my eyes. You must live, Calvin. You must live because Hale must die. And you're the one that's going to make it happen. I swear I heard his lips part into a smile, if he had lips. So Death made it clear for me again. What do you say, Calvin? I smiled. What must have been a sick, sinister grin. But a grin all the same. I'd say I want to live.